Wonderful, wonderful. Welcome back. Here is what we have so far. We have the gingerbread up there and all these bits all done for you. Okay, so this video should be our last video in this series, and we're going to be working on the plate of cookies and on affixing the back and lining the stocking. So that's what we've got coming up for you. So as you can see, I've worked ahead a bit, nothing that you haven't already seen me do. So the first directions that we have here with the cookie plate, let me tell you also that the first step says to put in the hang tab and to apply the back to the stocking. And I've opted to put those two steps later. To do those later, I normally do that at the very last thing. So I hope I'm not making an error, but that's how I normally do it. So the first step in the cookie platter here is to use, you're supposed to cut out the back of the cookie plate, which is number 74, and then take a piece of poster board, which I had lying around, and trace around it, and then cut out that piece of poster board. As you can see, my cutting was not great. Hopefully it will be good enough, and it should match or very closely match that piece number 74. Then we set it aside, and then we embroider this gray outline stitch on the center of the plate, which is piece 73, and then as you can see, I opted to attach it first to the platter, the gray piece, which is 72, before I put the sequins on, because you know how the sequins can catch. So whenever I have an option to stitch, I'm going to stitch first and then sequin after that. So that's what I did there. And now I am ready to sandwich this poster board in between these two pieces and to stitch them up all the way around. If as you get stitching, you can't pin this because of the poster board, so if as you get stitching you've got some poster board hanging out, just grab your scissors and snip that away so that you can stitch the two pieces together. It looks like I'm going to be doing some snipping right in there because it does hang out a bit. And then it says to set it aside, and then we're going to start working on the cookies. So that will certainly be the fun part. So I will stitch this around and trim as needed and come back with you when we're ready to start on the first of our cookies. Please excuse any extra noise. We have some handyman work being done here today. I did want to come right back here and tell you about something I did differently than I said. So I stitched the two felt pieces together about halfway because I was finding that when the cardboard was inserted in there, it was so slippery that I didn't know if I was going to be able to stitch it well. So I thought that will help me to also to see how well I've cut it and do I need to trim it. And as you might be able to see, I need to trim it quite a bit. So I'm glad I did that. So I am going to take my regular paper craft scissors, not my good scissors that I use to cut felt for the kits. Those scissors I keep very sharp, and I make sure they are sharpened regularly, and I never ever use them for anything but felt and material. So I recommend that and advise that as a good procedure for you as well, if you're not familiar with that. Okay, so you can see I ended up trimming off what I consider a fair amount. But I do see now that I can stitch the felt together without an issue. I might need to take that little point off there. There we go. And I will finish stitching it now all the way around, and then we'll be back because we will set it aside and start working on the cookies. Okay, kind of looks like a mess here, but what we've got here is a little gingerbread man. And we're going to do some embroidery on him, and then we're going to sew him down to the outside of this, and then we're going to do some embroidery right around there. So the first thing that I'm going to do is to do the 2 strands of black and the little French knots for his eyes. And you remember how we did that, and we wrap twice and go right back down in. This is where it gets a little challenging because it wants to go right back down into your knot that's on the back there. So sometimes you have to work on it just a smidge. There's one, and we're going to come right across over to the other. And do the double wrap, and then turn and poke it down and make sure you get your floss tight around your needle. Pull through. Okay, there's his little eyes. We can tie that off. And then we're going to do his mouth is once again is the 3 strands of red, and it's an outline stitch for that. And then the little lines across his arms and around, once we get it stitched down, are going to be the 3 strands of white. And if I'm interpreting it correctly, let's see, the directions for the individual cookies are here down along the side. So the gingerbread man is up here at the top, and it looks like kind of squares connected by lines. So oops, where's my chart? Here is the right chart. Squares connected with lines are 2 strands of white with a straight stitch. No, 2 strands of outline stitch right here. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, you can see that we have done the French knots, the outline stitch for his mouth, the outline stitch for his frosting, and his 2 sequins. And this is on number 76. And then we've cut out number 75, and we're going to place him and applique him right down just like that. Just get a pin to hold him steady there. And then we will go around the edge of the gingerbread man, you know, the piece 76. We'll go around that edge with a 3 strand of white, and we'll do that just around the edge of everywhere where he is stitched down, and then he will be finished. So I will come back and show you him when he is done and ready to be sitting on the tray. Okay, here is what the little gingerbread man looks like when he is all finished and ready to be put on the platter. Okay, so now we can check off the gingerbread man, and we are going to applique the candy cane 78 to the cookie back 77 and add the embroideries and sequins to the candy cane and then set it aside. So 78 and 77, the candy cane. It looks like here. And it looks like that the stripes are going to be embroidered on. And yes, they're going to be 2 strands of red satin stitch. So, and then the candy cane. Let's see, what does it say to do? The order. It says to applique the candy cane to the cookie back first, then add the embroidery and the sequins to the candy cane and set it aside. I don't see, oh, I guess there's white sequins and 2 strands of red satin stitch to embroider. So let me let you take a look at that. It looks like here is our candy cane number 77. That's the back. So we've got that ready. And here is the front, number 78. So we're going to cut this out and then cut this out and stitch it down. Then it will be much easier to do the 2-stranded satin stitch for these stripes here and here, and then a white sequin will be applied on each dot. Okay, so I will come back and let you see that. All right, I just wanted to give you a quick update on where we are. Here's the gingerbread man. Here is the candy cane. Okay, and they are done there. Now I have sewn the Christmas tree to its cookie base. It gets white outline stitch and red, just the beads, not the sequins. So I'll get that done. Now I'm working on the heart cookie. You sew the white heart to the red heart, and and then we're going to put the sequins on, and we're going to get an outline stitch, a white outline stitch right around on these lines on the red, and then both of those pieces will get stitched down to the cookie, and then we will move on. I'm going to try to get a lot of this done this weekend, which will most likely be off camera, so I'll come back and show it to you. But the same thing is going to be true for the star cookie. We're going to take the cookie base and sew it to the white star, and then it's going to get green sequins with 1 red one in the center. And then this snowflake cookie is going to get some looks like some straight stitch. So the snowflake itself is going to be straight stitch, and it looks like it's going to be red, and then it's going to get beads too, and I believe that these beads are going to be red as well. And then we've got some the sock, and it is going to have a running stitch that is white. That's what these are. And then it's going to have its toe and cuff pieces, and those will be white sequins. And then we've got the ornament, and it looks like this is a green straight stitch right here. I hope you can see what I'm doing here. And it's a green, no, this is a different stitch here. This is going to be, it looks like these little snowflakes on that ornament are going to be white. They're going to be 2 strands of white, and they're going to be straight stitch with red sequins on the band and green sequins on the main piece of the ball. And then we are done with making pieces. We are going to put them all on Santa's platter, piled up like they did in the picture. We'll match the picture as much as we can. The gingerbread man goes there, and the candy cane goes over here. Looks like the Christmas tree is going to go kind of right here, and so on around there, and those will get a very light stitch down. So I will be back probably after I have all that done, and I'll tell you about how I stitched it down to the platter, because the platter does have that piece of cardboard in it. So it's going to be a little bit more tedious to stitch that down. And then we will move on with the final finishing, which will be cutting out the back and pressing it, because it does get these creases in it, and how to attach it to the stocking, and then also how to do your lining. So we are so close. This will be the final video with all those bits here for you to finish up your stocking as well. So I hope you have a blessed rest of your day. We've got, and I did work over the weekend on this off camera. So here is the cookie platter. I have finished all of the individual cookies. I spoke about them on the last segment, about what needed to be done for each one, and then what I did. Sorry about all the noise, background noise here, but then what I did is I just, as the directions said, it says just tack the cookies to the front of the plate following the cover photo for placement. So I just used this photo, and I placed the cookies as I felt they fit best on the photo here. And so now all I have left to do is to simply tack them down. I'm going to thread up a needle with some of this thread that matches the brown, the outside of the cookie, and just give each cookie, maybe 3 or 4 tack stitches to hold it there. And then I'm trying to decide by looking at the picture where Santa's hand. So this hand should go like that, I think, right there on the gingerbread man, holding him down. And then Santa's other hand, I feel like I don't have it angled quite right for how I have the platter. So I'm going to just tack it down like that. I feel like his hand is not quite in the position that a real hand would be. I may kind of try to bring it in like that a little bit. Maybe try to tuck his thumb under and bring his fingers over the top. But that actually, when I do that, I look at it. If I hold it back, look back, it looks kind of funny that he doesn't have a thumb. So I think I'm going to try to just kind of bring his fingers over to it and tack his hand right there, just like that. And so then I'll be back to show you the whole stocking. Also, just a heads up on what I've worked ahead on is I did go ahead and cut out the back of the stocking. I just cut it out just like I would any other. And now before I actually work on this, I am going to place it on my wool ironing mat and press it out, because you can see it's got quite a bit of creasing in it, and I don't want that to remain. So I'll press that out, and then we will get back with you. I'll show you the finished front of the stocking after I get all these things tacked exactly the way I want them. And then we will work on talking about attaching the back of the stocking and the lining. Okay, here is the finished front of the stocking. You can see that I've got this all tacked down and attached. Pardon me. The one thing that I'm a little disappointed with is this hand. I should have consulted the picture better when I attached the hand. It looked like, in my mind, that I had it like the picture, but in fact I should have had his hand tilted a little bit more, and then it would have looked more realistic that he's not just holding this tray with his thumb. But still, I mean, we're as realistic as we can be, and there wasn't much I could do about it at that point except take his hand off and reposition it, and I felt that that was probably a little extreme for the issue. So there he is, he's sitting like this. So now we'll get some better close-ups and things of the stocking when we get it completely finished. So we set that aside. And now your next step is your back, the stocking back. And you will need to cut that out. And if you have creases like I do, you will want to press that. But our next step before I press is I'm going to get out my lining fabric. And this is the fabric that I have. I buy it from any fabric store. This is the inside, so here's you can see that it's really pretty. I always try to have a Christmas theme, but honestly it doesn't have to. You could use whatever you like. So I have it folded. This is going to be the last stocking I think that I can get out of this 1 yard of fabric, and I'm pretty good about being able to get probably about 4 or 5 stockings out of 1 yard of fabric, and I switch it and stuff. So after you cut the stocking back out, you're going to lay it on top of your fabric. And I usually like to give it a couple of pins to make sure it doesn't shift too much. And I'm going to use it as my pattern for cutting out my lining. And I'm going to also get out my good fabric scissors. You certainly can cut it with these small scissors that you might be using for the stocking felt pieces, but I think it's much easier to cut with a larger piece of scissors on this fabric. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out about 1/4 of an inch, and I'm going to cut all the way around. So this, I'm not cutting exactly to this. I'm going to cut about 1/4 of an inch outside. That's going to give me the approximately 3/8 to 1/2 inch seam that I want. Oops, I'm just noticing something here right now that I need to fix, because I want to leave as much at the top of this stocking as I can. Oh, did I not cut? There we go. So I'm going to come down here at the bottom as close to the edge, and you have to make sure that the edges are aligned. They're the same. And that's going to give me about 1 inch up at the top over where we have, because we're going to fold that. Can you see that here? It gives me about 1 inch here, because I'm going to cut straight up and then cut that off. So that gives me some to fold under inside the stocking and hem. So I really did just make it on this last stocking on this piece of fabric. So it just means I get to go to the fabric store this week, probably, and buy myself another couple yards of some fun Christmas fabric, which is probably going on sale. So good timing. Okay, so I will let you see how I cut that out. And I am using my large fabric scissors, and I'm going to rotate it here. And like I said, I'm going to be about 1/4 of an inch outside. just follow the contours of the stocking. It does not need to be precise at all because it is going to go just down inside. Just keep following the stocking around. This is not my best cutting. Wow, it's pretty jagged. But thankfully, when I stitch it, it will all be on the inside. And now this can be stitched many ways, but I have a serger. So I am going to use my serger to stitch this. It's going to make it the most secure. But you could stitch it on just a regular sewing machine. You could stitch it by hand, whatever you have. Just make use of that. But what you're going to do is run about a 3/8 to a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and you are going to, of course, leave the top open and stitch all the way around. So stitch all the way around the fabric, not including that, the fabric, and that will leave this top open. And we don't even turn it right side out because we're going to stick it down inside the stocking, and I'll show you that when I get there. But first I'm going to press my felt so that it doesn't have these creases, and then I'm going to run up the seam here on the lining, and then we'll be right back. Okay, the lining has been stitched. You can see that I choose to use the serger because I like the finished edge that it gives. But honestly, this is down inside the stocking. No one is ever going to see it unless for some reason your stocking is deconstructed. So it really doesn't matter how you choose to sew this, or even if you choose to line them. I'll be honest with you. I first heard about lining stockings when I started putting stockings for sale out on my website, and I noticed I was perusing other people selling them, and many or most of them were lined, and I thought, I'd never thought about that. I made 6 stockings for my children. I never lined them. I made other stockings as well, never lined them, and I've never had a problem with that. So, but I thought, to go with the flow, I will think about lining, and I have done that since then, and I like the precautionary nature. You can tell if you've watched this whole video that I'm kind of into making sure that things are the best that they can be. So you know that if I take 2 stitches is good, 4 is better, so that's what I've been doing, is I've been lining since then. So now we're on our very not quite, but it's almost our very final step. And what I've done here is I did press the felt back, the stocking back, and the most important part of this is that you line up the top edge of the back of the stocking with the front edge, and I'm going to pin that there where I like it. And you can see that it's hanging over a little bit, and that is because when we have put all these things onto the top and stitched them, the felt kind of gets a little bit compressed and a little bit out of shape, as much as it has been. But you're just going to lay it down, and then what I'm going to do is my next step is going to be to pin it. Especially I want these top corners pinned right where I want them. And then what I'm going to do is go around and trim off anything that hangs out that's excess. But I want to pin it down first because I want to be sure that it really is excess. Sometimes once you get there to pin it, you realize, like, see, this is right where it needs to be. And I am going to need to pull back this fringe here so that I can make sure I don't cut that off. But I do have a fair amount of excess here that I am going to be trimming away. And no big deal. I would much rather have excess than have not enough, or to have it be, somehow skimpy or something somewhere. And in order to trim away this excess, I am going to be using my small scissors for that, because I don't want to accidentally take off too much by using the larger scissors. Okay. Where did I set my small? There they are. Okay, so I am going to just go along here and you've got to be so careful because you can't cut in to the felt of the stocking front, or you may lose some of your stitches in your applique. So you do have to do this very carefully. And in fact, many times, I'll tell you this, I don't do this until I'm done sewing it. And once I'm done sewing it, I'll probably go back along and actually trim it some more, just because I may have shifted some things. So, in fact, that's what I'm going to say to do, and that's what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to cut this off so I don't have that thing hanging there, but I'm going to stitch it down before I trim, and that just makes me feel better. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to thread up a embroidery needle, and because the back of this stocking is green, I'm going to use a double strand threaded of green. It just lets me work a little bit longer than if I double a single strand. There we go, and I have my thread conditioner. And I'm going to do a stitch that I call a seamstress stitch. I'll be honest with you, I'm really not certain what it's called. It might be called a back stitch. I think I've seen it called that in some places. A lot of times, these hand stitching of things is kind of, at this point, kind of ancient. And it was from a time when, we were not really always all on the same page across the country or wherever we might have been. So some of these things get called different things in different areas. It's hard to know what. I guess there isn't one thing that's true. I guess they're all true. So enough of my editorializing. But what I'm going to do is I'm not going to start sewing on the white. I'm going to switch to white thread for up here, just so that the stitching does not become really obvious. But I am going to begin over here on this side, and in some places I'm going to come in about 1/4 of an inch. Let me come down and hopefully give you a little bit. That looks like it's pretty clear. Okay, so I'm coming in about 1/4 of an inch. I'm skipping the white, even though this white is kind of covered by the gingerbread man, but we'll still match it. And of course, the first thing I do is get tangled. Okay, and pull all the way up. And then I do try to keep my stitches about 1/4 of an inch apart. And then I'm going to go in and back out about 1/4 of an inch away. That's just how you start this stitch. Now I'm going to take my next stitch right where this stitch went back down in. So I'm going to go down in there and come back up about 1/4 of an inch away from where I came out. And these 1/4 inches are rough, and this gives you a really good secure stitch, almost as if you did it with a sewing machine. It's that type of a stitch. Now, if you line the stocking, I had one woman let me know in the comments that it really doesn't matter how strong this stitch is if you're going to line the stocking, because, and in truth, she's very right, the lining really takes all of the burden of weight or contents of your stocking. It's really not going to fall. You're not going to end up with weight or stress on this seam, and that's a good thing, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to make it strong enough to support it if it should. And I'm seeing, and I think I made note of this in the beginning when I began, that this green felt is actually kind of thin. And in comparison to the white felt of the backing stocking, it's very, very thin. So I think that this stitch is even that more useful in that scenario, because I really, really don't want the felt, this green felt, to bear the burden of any contents or weight or anything on this stocking. So, oops. Pins and sequins are going to continue to be an issue, as they have been throughout this process. And here, let me just show you the back. See, on the back you end up with really a pretty much a solid stitch, as if unlike if you were just going in and out and in and out and not backtracking each time, then you would have some gap in your stitching. So this helps to be sure that you're not ending up with any spaces that maybe are weaker or something could slip through. And again, with the lining, that removes all of that as a potential issue. And so this is just how I'm going to keep going all the way around. If I come to a place where I'm not working on green, if it's significant at all, like over here on the table, I don't want green stitches. You can see that on the top here. So I'll show you what I do. I'm actually going to switch to the back side of the stocking, and I'm not going to go through all the way to the front, because in these cases we have multiple layers of felt, so we can stitch just through the a couple layers and not have to come all the way to the front, and that way it keeps your stitching from actually showing on the front. So let me work my way around to over there, and then I will show you what that looks like. Okay, here I am to the first part where I do not want the green seam to go across Santa's suit. So I'm going to come right up to the edge of his suit with my seam stitch there. And now I'm going to flip it over to the other side. And I'm going to do the same stitch. I'm going to see where my thread is here. I'm going to come right here and go in and out, and I can feel that I have got the green felt, but not all the way through to the white. And I'm going to come across like that. I'm still working about 1/4 of an inch from the edge and catching all that felt, but you can see I'm not coming through to the front side. And this is the stitch. It's the same stitch, but it's just what you're going to do when you come to a place where you don't want your seam to interrupt the pattern and the picture of what you've got going on the front. Okay, and I can feel that I've made it all the way through. And so now I'm going to come back here and meet my last stitch, bring it up right there next to his coat, and continue exactly like I was doing before. And I will do the same thing when I come over here on the other side there to the table with the cookies and the rolling pin and stuff on it. I will do that same thing where I will flip it over and work from the back side. Goodness sakes. There we go. And just keep on working my way around. This takes some time. Just make it your happy place. And I love this stage because it really does help me to feel like I am so close to being done. And that is such a great feeling. And don't let me forget, because I did on my last one, that I have to put the hanging tab on before I finish the whole lining of the stocking. So don't forget that. I still have that piece in my box over there, and I need to cut that out and get it ready. I always stitch the tab to the back of the stocking, although I know the directions say to stitch it to the front. I feel like when I put something in the stocking, if the tab is on the front, the stocking tends to kind of twist and hang funny. So over the years, I have always attached my tabs to the back. It seems to hang best that way, and it allows me, I'll show you how I stitch it on there to get a really good secure stitching on there. You know me and secure, because that even though you've got lining, the tab is really what is carrying the weight. And then the other clue or tip I have for you is that when it's time to fill the stockings, I hang the stockings out all Christmas season, and we enjoy them and seeing all the kids' names and everything. But when it comes time to fill the stockings, I take them down, I fill the stockings, and then we put them in our living room or family room, wherever we're celebrating, on a chair or a place at the couch, and that's where that child will sit to unpack their stocking. And that way the stockings never end up with really any weight in them, and having to hang from that weight. And then it's always been our policy that you take the contents that you got, all your treasures, and get those eaten or put away or whatever you're going to do with them in a safe place, and then they hang their stocking back up on the stocking hanger empty. So our stockings never hang with anything in them, and that's just been my kind of safety policy with all of the time and the effort and the love that is put into each stocking. I would just hate to come out in the morning and find it damaged because it fell, because it was carrying too much weight. So we don't want that to happen. As you can see, this is pretty tedious where this fringe is. I'm just about to end off this thread, and now I need to make sure, I'm going to have to come back and make sure that I get all that fringe out of there and not caught in my stitches. So I'm going to knot off here and start a new piece. But I want to make sure that I didn't catch any of this in my stitching. It's real easy just to get it out, but I'll have to be careful when I trim off too. When I trim the white away, not to trim off the fringe. So, all right, I will come back with you. I will be doing the same thing with the cuff up here, except I will change to white thread, do the same stitch right here, up here and on this side, and then we will come back and we will attach the tab, because I'm not going to forget, and do all of our finishing and insert our lining. Okay, so we'll be right back for that. Okay, here is the stocking. It has all been completed. I did trim after sewing, and definitely that's the way to go. Sew first and then trim any extra of your backing felt after you sew it. It is far easier. You can see here is the back, and here is the front. And now I have my lining ready to go in. I have not turned it right side. See, here is the right side. So I'm just simply going to stick my hand down in the toe of the lining and stick my hand down in the stocking and push that toe all the way down into the toe. Hang on to it. Get the heel down in the heel. Have it be as flat, you can just I'm just feeling in there to see how flat it is. And trying to keep it flat, try not to twist it. So I try to keep my seams lined up with the side seams of the stocking. So I've got it down in all the way, as far as it will go in the toe and in the heel. There we go. And I'm going to straighten it out up here at the top, and you can see I've got all this extra up here at the top, and that's exactly what we want, because now I'm going to turn it down and have it be, I usually line up, I like to line up my seams, my side seams here. Get my pins here. And I am going to pin it, matching the side seams, and having my fabric about 1/4 of an inch below the edge of my felt. And I'm going to put one pin on this side, and then I'm going to come over here and do the same thing and just turn it under. Oops. And place it, matching the seams, and then pin it. And then you can go through and get your other pieces down. Now, as you can see, mine is got a lot of give there. It's got a lot, and I'm going to let all that give, I'm going to let all that extra go into the sides. Okay, into the side seams. And that's where I'm going to let that reside, kind of. I'm going to pin it this way. And so I put one pin on each of the seams and one pin in the center, both in the front and the back. Oh, here I am again. Look at this. I am not putting in my tab. So let me stop right here, get my tab, okay, and this kit, the tab is red. And I'm going to get that cut out. Just takes a second here to cut out that tab. And then I am going to stitch the tab with white because the back of my stocking is white. So I'm going to match that. I don't want it to be just kind of glaring at you from the back of the stocking, the stitching that we do to stitch the tab down. Hey. No, Finny. No. For some reason, he has been far more interested in this stocking than I think any other stocking I've ever made. Maybe it's the cookies. Okay, so here's the tab, and you're going to fold it in half. Okay. And take the stocking. I have to unpin this one side just because I want to be able to get, no, I want to be able to get my tab right at the seam, and I would say it's about an inch down. Can you see that? About an inch down from the outside edge. And now I'm going to get my white embroidery needle with 2 strands of white embroidery floss or just white thread, whatever you prefer. And I'm going to do the same back stitch that I was doing to fasten the back to the front, but I'm going to do it in a square, kind of just right here, and then I'm going to put an X, go from corner to corner on either side in that square. And that really provides you with a very, very secure anchoring of this tab. So I'm going to start on the inside because I want my knot on the inside. And we're just going to use that same back stitch in, like I said, in fairly small stitches. And you're just going to go around like a square. So about 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of your tab, and about 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of the top edge of the stocking. Uh-oh. There we go. I caught a little bit of the felt from the gingerbread man, but that was easy. See, I'm going to have to thread up my needle with a little more white thread here in order to finish. Okay, so this finishes my square, but then I need to put an X in the middle of the square, and that helps to really make sure that you've got a good anchor there. Okay, so let me thread it up again. Okay, and this is just a single thread. I only need a little bit more, so I'm gonna just bring it down and double it rather than pulling off another double strand. There we go. And once again, I am going to start, oops, if I hang on to my needle, on the inside, the corner, because I want my knots on the inside. This is not a show part of the stocking at all. Okay, and I'm just going to go with the same stitch, the back stitch, from one corner to the other. And then I'm just going to work my needle up to this next corner here and do the same thing, going from corner to corner with my back stitching. And give it a good knot off. And I have finished that before I made a mistake and had to undo. Okay. As you can see, here is the stitching. It really doesn't show much on the back of the stocking there. And then the inside, right there, you can see, and that is going to be covered up because we are going to go back to our lining and put that, Get that pin. Right at the seam. Okay. And now I'm just going to pin the lining fabric just about 1/4. Well, I want to go from the center to the side seam, and that way I can put any extra fabric that there might be in the side seam. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. And this is just eyeballing it. It's not precise. Nothing of this is going to show. And you can see I've got some extra fabric here. So I'm going to just pull that in towards the seam. And that will just get tucked right there. Now let's do the same thing on the front. We're going to work from the center to the side seams. And on this one, I'm kind of just using my stitches as a guide. And then I've got extra here again, see? So I'm going to just let that go into the side seam there. And it will just be a little tuck. And then we're going to do the same thing over here. And this one doesn't have any, so I can actually kind of, there we go, move that over just a smidgen and give us a little bit of slack there. There we go. Okay, and now I'm going to have my white, because the back of the stocking is white and the front cuff is white. So I'm choosing white. And I'm going to do what's called, at least what I learned, is a blind stitch. And of course, I like to start at a side seam, and I'm going to do the back first. And I'm going to leave my knot actually here on the inside. So I'm going to take one small stitch here just to get my knot there, and one small stitch. This is just to kind of give me a good anchor here right in this side seam. So just a couple of small normal stitches right there. And then now let me bring this down. So, okay, you can see. So what I'm going to do is pick up just a little bit of the felt, and again my felt is very thick, so I don't have to go all the way through. And then if you can see my needle here, I'm going to just go into the fold of this material. So I'm not going to come to the outside, I'm just going into the fold. And that is what makes the stitch blind. You cannot see it. So right where my thread came out, right here, I'm going to go into the felt and get just a little piece of the felt. Can you see? See, I've got a little piece of the felt right there. And then I'm going to go into the fold of the fabric and get a little piece of that and pull through. But I'm not coming to the outside of the fabric here. So again, let me get that pin out of the way. Right where the thread came out, I'm going to pick up a little bit of the felt and now go into the fold of the fabric and come through. And you can see, if you know what to look for, I can see little tiny stitches right there, but they're very hard to see and they're virtually hidden. So that's how they get their name. At least what I learned was a blind stitch or an invisible stitch. And I'm going to go all the way around the top of the stocking, just like this. And if you think your stocking might get a lot of traffic in and out of it, I would say then take a little knot stitch every once in a while like this, just a tiny stitch or two like that, so that if it was starting to come loose, that would stop it before it got too far. And then just keep going again, a little bite in one side and just in the fold of the fabric, lining fabric. And sometimes my felt is not as thick as this white, and I do end up going all the way through. And that's why I would suggest that you choose to match your thread with the backing color of your stocking. And the different kits I've done have different color backs, so it really just depends on that. All right, there it is. It is completely finished. You can see the tab is on. The lining is down inside. Can you see that down in there? Okay, and my last and finishing touch is always to add my maker's label. So I will just simply stitch that right in there. If I can pin it. I just stitch it into the lining so it doesn't show up out on the back at all. But I'll stitch my maker's mark in there, and then we're done. So here you can see you and I together. We have completed this great stocking. All the bits, all the parts, everything is ready to go for Christmas and for Santa to be able to just fill it up with all kinds of nice goodies. I see that got some crazy fringe going on here. I think this is why I'm not a huge fan of fringe, is because I just continuously feel like I need to straighten it out. But anyway, there it is. And I think Jessica And I hope Jessica has many happy Christmases with this stocking, and that it is a blessing to her and to her family in the future. And we hope that you all have a great blessing of working with us. It was a blessing for us to have you work along with us, and we really appreciate it. So come back anytime. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. We'd be happy to help with any suggestions or any ideas that you might have. We'd love to hear them. So we hope that you have a merry and a very blessed Christmas.